The Russian Old Stories by John Clay. Act One, Chapter 1. A stage called Shrewsbury. Back and forth I rock. A ball of skinny me in the corner of a padded cell. Imagine me as fetal, hunched, chin to knee. Like many of Shrewsbury Court's lost souls, I consider my room a sanctuary, but it's also a stage. Time has long since abandoned me to a near vacuum. The occasional inhuman scream of a fellow resident muffled just beyond four walls of protective white. Sometimes my cell door heaves open, flooding my room with incantations peppered with made-up words. My attention slides past the communal insanity and over the shoulders of those who've paid me a visit. Through the corridor windows, past metal and glass, I home in on the dark stretch of Mother Nature. She rattles against double glazing. My hands grasp at crayon yellow foliage as the door closes behind my visitors, these officials who process me as a puzzle, not a person. There he is, portly bespectacled Dr. Kwame, flanked by twin towers of muscle. Taut biceps ripple through medical whites, faces interchangeable with protocols set so deep under the skin I can't imagine their masks of officialdom ever soften. Not even around families after their long day in hell. Shrewsbury Court, my stage. Time for this scene's lines. I clear my throat. My families send their servants to densely populated areas, cities, 'cause that's where they think I'll hide. Dr. Kwame fumbles in his cardigan pockets, no doubt for a notebook, the feigned sympathy in his eyes, so practiced. His pen busy upon the page as he listens to the case study that rarely breaks its silence. See, I continue, the Omnisire thinks I'm like him, constantly after hero worship, surrounding myself with as many potential acolytes as possible. Daddy's army won't find me, not out here in Surrey. That's when I leap from my seating place, near flying at Dr. Kwame. My long fingers spin round the chubby man's neck, squeezing tight, trapping air. This minion has tentacles, I scream as my hands tighten round the doctor's throat. It's possessed Dr. Kwame to get to me. Both nurses wrestle my slight frame away from Kwame, who splutters and coughs the way fat people do after only a modicum of exercise. I let loose a maniac's wail, full-on Joker, right in their steroid-pumped faces. You have an unhealthy fluidity of character, David, Dr. Kwame says. His hands massage his jugular as he exits. I've been a resident of Shrewsbury Court for 6 long, hard years now, and now and again I've laughed maniacally over being assigned a black therapist. It has to be intentional, never mind pointless. My complex heritage is beyond these apes. Personalities are informed by shared experiences, David. Dr. Kwame places his notes against his chest, head cocked to the side as he speaks. Where you grew up, who your associates are, what class your parents were born into. You are free to be Spiderfingers because there is no expectation from your family and friends. Their vacancy allows you to play the tragic hero. And just how old are you, David? To be on first-name terms with gods of an assortment of pantheons, I mean, your past is inherently contradictory. The history of worship is synonymous with culture. There are a multitude of languages you'd have to know in order to deal with them all. I smile at all this, and I'm sure he can see no humor in my face at all as I point at him, the words darting out of me. How many times a year must I repeat myself? For the billionth time, no self-respecting deity can afford to rule his patch of dirt without at least 12 interpreters. I adjust my glasses. Besides, the gods you know are only limited remembrances of those who once walked among us. Question my age again, please. Lately, I've lost myself to daydreams. Each metal and fiber that surrounds me reconfigured under the guiding hands of imagination. My padded cell warps into an abstract memory. The room houses me, and me alone. But in my mind, I play to a gallery of many. In my head, I stand center stage for the approval of a packed auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, Boys and girls, giants and trolls, tonight I shall play both parts. I fire home line upon line of my production, but not at a cushioned wall. I only see the darkness, can only hear the applause. The delusion bears no cracks, and I detect no flaw in creativity's sculpture. Behold! I whip off my tracksuit bottoms, plain white hoodie and slippers to reveal slacks, a cream shirt, and a lab coat. My finger rams under flared nostrils, posing as a mustache, whilst I cup an imaginary smoking pipe against my hip. The absurdist parody of an old English gent, complete. Feast your eyes, my wonderful watchers. I am the overfed Dr. Kwame, and I swiftly unglue the moustache and throw my lab coat into the front row of my fantasy crowd, and they see me, a sinewy man of African descent, long past the age of 25. I am the demigod of chaos, Spiderfingers. Look upon me, ladies and gentlemen. I sport a dense, thick sponge of an afro, hard as rock. The static tangle of dreads atop the swaying mess of my character, a man who seemingly cares little for his hair, little for his personal hygiene. So revolting. My mouth prone to moments of elasticity, like so. A display of my open mouth, one finger aimed under my chin, whilst one side of my jaw is dropped, then the other. The set-out crowd laughs riotously. Drool-laminated chest, of course, till Nurse Stevens or Nurse Patel become charitable with their cloths. It's straitjacket time again, eh, kids? It's at this point that I leer up at children, those pesky little adults-to-be giggling in the royal box. Here I stand, an underweight, scrunched-up wreck, all laced up in a spit-laden patient's robe. A madman, clearly, and in dire need of new glasses. Round after round, check after check, my life the ongoing play, an instant success, an exhaustive performance run since 2004. One act follows the next, until lying down is all I can do. I flinch when the cup is forced to my mouth, and the river of sting stretches down my throat and sits patiently in my belly. Over the years, it's never been easy to stop myself from punching my fist through Kwame's 6-foot-plus orderlies, let alone the doctor himself. Still, I do my best to endure talk of a persecution complex, only pretend to be frustrated. I deny myself the use of X-ray vision, you see. Superhearing and anything else that might disrupt my immersion into the role are all discounted. Nothing can disrupt my play here at Shrewsbury. That is, until I hear the voice.
The Russian Doll Stories, Chapter 2, The Voice. Human beings differ from superheroes. Their lives aren't beholden to one pivotal moment, says Matt. I shuffle in my seat as my voice travels out of Matt's mouth. Unlike the billionaire orphan who swears an oath beside dying parents, or the teenager who vows never to misuse his spider powers after a lesson in responsibility, humans rarely take the law into their own hands after a tragedy. In this sea of tables, these life rafts where families confront strangers wearing masks of people they once knew, Matt Holdsworth affects an air of royalty. Superheroes are more likely born in Gaza than New York City, right? I reply. And the world wouldn't call these people superheroes, says Matt, hands behind his head, looking up at the whiter-than-white ceiling. And they fictionalize their lives, don't they, Chief? His arms lazily mess with long, lanky surface hair. He stretches back, surveying the room, opal blue eyes skittering here, skittering there. I've seen this look on creatures bigger and bolder than him. I've worn this look myself. Parties, summits, funerals, gigs, on the battlefield surrounded by a stench of a 2-day battle. My kind, always at the center of the room, the hall, the area where only the strong shine, their light remembered by those they wish they control. Matt, American, West Coast, most probably late 20s, but with that baby face and buoyant need to keep moving demeanor, Matt exudes the aura of a know-it-all teen. Looks like Brad Pitt in 12 Monkeys. Looking like Brad in a place like this allows us to be friends. To have powers and not go nuts, that's the real talent, he says. That's true genius. There you go, Matt, speaking without waiting for a reply. We've been through all that. Long gone are the times when I'd walk away, made you work for attention. We mythologize our lives, don't we? Pretend to have control. Right, Chief? Matt goes on with more of this, not to educate me, but as a way to suggest that we share common knowledge. I shift in my seat. I yawn. And sometimes we need to have a holiday, a time out from it all. I'm right, aren't I, Chief? Out comes my diary. Out flow the words from my mouth. Father's love letter. No one wants to hear that the Omnisire commanded the goddess of confusion to create pseudology. Who wants to believe in male demons, instructing poems and literature and plays that would give man an alternate history of events? Through Ovid and Homer, the pseudology, they exist, masters of propaganda masquerading as stories. I want to entertain Matt. Shame about his breakdown. Shame about his fiancée. Matt's asked me a question just now, I'm sure, but I can't hear him over a voice that has no place here. I rush from our table, out the hall, back to my room. Door slams shut. Hands rush to the sides of my head, but the voice rings clear. The voice rings true. Soups, it's me, Vicky. Fast-talking words from behind my left earlobe. Can you hear me? Maturity in the vocal. So disconcerting. But then, it's been years. How are you? Vicky shares confessions, off and on, for days. I sing bad pop music. I should be so lucky, 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 lucky. But Vicky buzzes on. What's the food like? Kylie Minogue fails to push Vicky out of my head, so I pace the room through a cold spot. Like she's a signal, and my head's the radio. Her monologues begin with social niceties, till the small talk gets bigger and bigger, and, okay, I get why you left, but things are like really weird at home. Basically, Soups, we need you back. I should be so lucky, 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 lucky. Sometimes I find her apologetic, and yet, for all its regret in reaching out, Vicky's voice won't cease. My palms squash against my ears, but pleas for help seep through, often in the afternoon, a few more ear-pricking sentences during early evening. No word for days until, hey, I want to come to visit you, but I know Mum and Dad will find out. Like, you might not even be hearing this. You're so far away. Found my head smashing a wall one morning. Sometimes works. When her voice stops, I hear my own. Life played out like some comic book header. Spiderfingers must fight his way through wave after wave of warriors in order to survive. A tale shared with my psychiatrist to keep me locked up. These minions belong to jealous off-world brethren, a race of divinities who relentlessly seek their access to Earth in order to rule us with fists of iron. For the gods to return, Spiderfingers must die. In my holding room, within walls of cloud padding, my inner monologue becomes laughable. Not like the first day. Wild facts spouted at top volume whilst nurses fought to restrain me. Knowledge of threatening monsters, wild tales of outlandish worlds burst from my mouth in speech far too rapid for medical staff to comprehend. A wide-eyed splurge which continued long after shots of sedative injected into my arm, and on, long after I'd been strapped down to a bed in my new home. What did Hara call it? Off the radar. Ah, Hara. A resident of Shrewsbury Court herself. And yet it would be idiocy to make any request to see her. No. I have to rely on myself. Remaining in Shrewsbury means keeping others alive. Vicky must stay in here to protect Vicky. How much time do I have? I should be so lucky. When will some undeserving stray minion take advantage of my uncertainty? Lucky, lucky, lucky! How long till my father's troops manage to snuff me out? I should be so lucky in love. I might lose my mind first. Inane pop lyricism unable to wall off lunacy. I should be so lucky. Other voices might join Vicky's, my brain presenting me with individuals doctors can't see. A resident in the next room lets out a yowl, a familiar scream given fresh horror. A being as powerful as me best leave here sane, then break out insane. Fuck this. I'll just punch through these walls and fly away and... No. Don't think like a nutter. Using my capabilities to escape will only draw attention from body-snatching minions. No, I will employ my brain. The Russian Doll Stories, Chapter 3, Pretending to be David's Shape. A lot of improvement, says Kwame. A healthy rate of distance and steady disposal of this fantasy character, chimes Dr. Silberman, both medical men seated at the table in my new room. Mauve walls pasted with indications of my 90s heyday. Kurt Cobain wilted over a guitar whilst Jarvis Cocker poses effeminate, the chronicler of broken relations and illicit sex, a pop singer once worthy of a centerfold. I allow myself a wry smile and examine the production value of my life. The governors of my treatment believe this living space to be evidence of a sound mind, a new man who applies to his Christian name without disagreement or hesitation. Jewel laminated chest, of course. What was that, David? Did you say something? Oh, nothing. I lie to the nurse, the doctor, the cleaner working through their shift. I lie to anyone who hears me talking to Vicky, just mumbling a song to myself. I know they watch me. I know they take notes. I keep my own. What you writing there, David? Says Naya Stevens, her free arm wheeling a trolley into my space. Well, it's good to write things down so you don't forget them. I want to stare away from her arm slung against her midriff. Some fractures. Graffiti in the cast says, Queen Stevens. I want to stare away, but I look directly at her arm as I say, about the fight last week. Shh, David! She unloads fresh toiletries as she says this. You weren't yourself. From day one, his violent episodes resulted in protective solitary confinement. Performances without violence could have fallen flat, regardless of the delivery of his fantastical worldview. There we go, all neatly pressed into the page. Spiderfingers shook, doing his utmost to play up his mid-distance glare, attention seemingly elsewhere, whilst Dr. Kwame stood across from him. On every given occasion, he'd offer no reaction to professional talk of negative behavioral patterns, no flicker of the eyes when the term hyperpsychosis was coined. I kiss the cover and imagine it growing lips to kiss me back. I wait till Nurse Stevens completes her housekeeping before I slump on the edge of my bed, crying, journal in hand. And I'm not mad. I'm perfectly sane. I straighten up and watch my pen continue to write about me. Addictive subscription to childhood trauma, another recurring damnation, but Spiderfingers had played the part of the non-responsive, slobbering patient long enough. My pen leaves the page, and my body slumps across my bed. I could sleep now. Better out than in. In spite of the humdrum requirements of my day-to-day, I remain in character, sane enough for Kwame to prescribe walks up and down the lawn. Naturally, all business outside the room is thoroughly mapped out before execution, every movement practiced, the smile on my face, a perfected stage direction. Dude, we really need you. You're better off helping us than staying away. Of course she's followed me,
an audible spectre that's marred my move from the high security wing. "You're not here! I can't hear you!" As the final "you" escapes my mouth, I recognize, right here, sitting aghast in front of assessors, how far I've set my rehabilitation back. That fat fuck Kwame, playing with that smoking pipe of his. I block out the following weeks of sit-downs and observation. I read through the lines in my head, channeling the dramatic role my observers demand. Most importantly, I kill off a friendship. "Hey, Chief!" Matt skips into the dining area, a new painting under his arm. "Got a new one! Look!" I don't raise my eyes from the diary, not even with all the kinetic energy that's traveled through Matt's cross-legged landing atop the table. "Take a chair, please," says a passing nurse. "How many times do we have to tell you what you already know, Matt?" He obliges, putting a face behind her. "Chief, you cool?" I act like nothing's been said. Not so much as a smile in Matt's direction. Then his painting covers my diary. This one, like so many others, features me in a heroic pose, one arm holding a masked man off the ground, whilst my head is turned away from the thief, my cheeks full as I seem to be blowing a gust of super breath towards a building covered in flame. "Good, huh?" Matt says, leaning over to point out that the S took ages to get right. But what, 5 months? It's the quickest one to date, yeah? In the picture, I'm wearing a Superman top. Admittedly, the S does look good. Spiderfingers likes it, but David Shape can't. The script does not say that he gives his friend a hearty backslap. There is no David thanking Matt for searching him out in his new ward. Little room for improvisation, not at this story beat. Instead, David calmly collects the portrait off his diary, tears it up, and spits a huge wad of phlegm in Matt's face. Days later, and I'm sat here by my window, overlooking the gardens of Shrewsbury. My long strolls throughout the complex offer respite, but only for a short while. Vicky wafts everywhere I walk. "Hey, Soups! Why won't you come? I know you can hear me." Trembling fingers encircle my pen. The scratching underneath Spiderfingers' bed had become notable as, "No, so I said no, I don't like the idea of it, but women should have the right, mate." I slap myself in the temple. Has the voice been knocked out of my brain? After a few seconds of silence, I'm writing again, writing and hoping. 4 tentacles whipped out from beneath his bunk. "Shut her right up!" Long purple limbs bound over his legs and torso, over and over, and "You gotta stand up for your mates, right? You gotta stand up for your..." I slam my head into my writing table. A few more headbutts until I'm alone. Spiderfingers hauled his entirety up, tearing at the rubbery feelers till he became free, able to grab the bedsides and wrench it out the wall. He stood triumphant for a moment, pillows and sheets falling off the bedstead, gripped in his fists, high above his head as, "Having you round made me a better person," says Vicky. I bite into my writing hand until there's nothing but pain. I don't care how everyone else remembers things. You're a hero. Don't forget that. I pummel my head a few more times until she's gone. A moment of silence. A long pause. The pen in my hand scribbles upon the paper again, jotting away as I cradle the huge diary close. So large. I could empty a world into these pages and still have room for an extra valley or two. The monster quivered, juddering insect-like, its frantic display of dying awful to behold. Spiderfingers slammed the furniture down upon the minion's back, crushing its body with an unfeeling cold-bloodedness. Mucus flew out of the sides of the upturned bed, purple guts all over the room. "Another idiot bites the dust," he said, picking the viscera from between toes. "This isn't living," he thought, "but this isn't dying either." "Spiderfingers!" I jump at the return of Vicky's voice, crunching its way through an ample, chomping big chunks out of my concentration. What do you do all day anyway?" My notebook and pen fly at the wall. Eventually I walk across the room, snatch them up, and return to the bed to try again. I try a new tactic, a steady increase of media, my desperate bid to filter out the blather. Initially, I can't read the words of others, Vicky's pleading being omnipotent. Months go by before magazines, radio, comics, and television work collectively to station my thoughts. I take the world in through the prism of character. There is no Spiderfingers, just David Shape. Harold Camping speaks about the end of the world. A whirlpool forms off the Japanese coast after the March tsunami, the fall of Bin Laden. A protester gets pepper sprayed at an Occupy Portland protest. The death of Steve Jobs. The Arab Spring. Hurricane Irene. The death of Amy Winehouse. Riots blaze across London whilst copycat violence erupts in neighbouring cities. David Shape's world has a history, and the fantastical muddle of Spiderfingers' past becomes overrun with current affairs, opinion polls, and pop culture high watermarks. It's September again, and here I am, laughing with the Martell family. Cynthia and Huxley Martell visit Shrewsbury every week to check in with their son, Robert. The day spent wading through his doublespeak and confusion. The task proves easier once I offer insight into their son's brain. That one time I happened across them in the hall, explaining Robert's tiny invisible slug could whisper how the Queen was an evil Nazi lizard, but it can never remind the young man how much his parents love him. Often these scenes are staged in full view of senior staff, unaware of their characterization as theatre-goers. David Shape, a hero in their midst, not a fantasist. "Thank you so much, young man," says Huxley as he takes his wife's arm. They depart the scene at a measured pace. "Ought not to be here, in my opinion," whispers Cynthia to the ever-nodding Huxley, the couple smiling as they walk down the hall with Robert, their shared approximation of recovery wears my face. "One day Robert will be Robert again," said Cynthia, as her mind proceeds to superimpose the charm of David's Shape onto the awkward stuttered movements of her son. "So you no longer believe you're the combination of a demigod and a man?" "No, I do not," I replied to the committee before me. "You never led an uprising to protect the world from the gods?" "Definitely not. Let's face it, I've never pulled off the whole antiquated mindset thing. Listen to the way I talk. Far too contemporary." Dr. Kwame twists in his seat. He scribbles notes. He makes me wait. "So, just so we can be sure that none of your past beliefs are still at play, you don't believe the ancient Greeks tunneled to subterranean depths to claim and utilize alien life to, He leans forward into his notepad, although he's been privy to my mythos for years, to protect Mother Nature from the Omnisire, No. And that these creatures, those grapple worms as you called them, they don't exist. They don't imbue the owner the power to transplant powers from symbols or brand logos such as a superhero emblem. That was the illness talking. Grapple worms don't exist. The demigods don't collude with the spirit of the earth to protect man from the existence of all this history. It says here, man must be shielded from the gods so as not to serve them. A mental convenience. The statement is made clearly. I non-believe with all my might. And the earth itself isn't alive. Of course the earth is alive. Oh, says Dr. Kwame, looking to the side, eyes slanted. Yes, like any organism, the planet lives. But you can't talk to a tree and expect conversation. Be a fairly one-sided chat. So then you're not the savior of the world. I'm saddened to have made such a claim. Tell me why, asked Dr. Kwame, leaning over at the far end of the long table. Fellow adjudicates paused their note-taking. It's embarrassing. I had significant issues regarding my overbearing mother and my father's megalomania that I distorted my way of seeing them in myself. Does being mentally ill embarrass you? Asked the doctor. If you have a broken leg, you go to a hospital. I came here because deep down I knew I needed help. Thank you. Dr. Kwame can't help but smile.
But what if we decide you're better off here, that your leg needs more time? Then I'll agree to stay. I came here screaming, but the important detail to remember is that I came here. Without you all, I'd be lost. That's enough for now. Dr. Kwame toys with the pen in his hands, forcing a smile. We'll go over this again soon. I rise from the desk, and with a firm handshake, I make my way toward the door. I stop. None of it made any sense, you know. I lean into the door frame. Why put all the Earth's survival on the shoulders of one being? I was sick, and now, thanks to you, my sickness is in the past. I'm sure of it. Out the door I go, with a bounce in my step. I don't know if I'm genuinely happy with my performance, or if I'm projecting the air of success. I don't know how I'm able to keep walking without turning to see if Kwame is still there, at the door, watching me depart. The Russian Doll Stories, Chapter 4, Better Out Than In. Progress. After 7 years of residency, my watchers have seen fit to set me free. No more pretending to be David Shape, no more accepting birthday wishes on behalf of a dead man. Happy birthday, David, says Dr. Kwame. Thank you. I wave goodbye to Dr. Kwame, my palm at the taxi's door. No more prescriptions, evaluations, or creepy Dr. Silberman, the dwarf man in his wraparound correctional shades. Farewell, Shrewsbury Court, your orange-brown brickwork looming in the warm afternoon. I resist a theatrical bow as I toss my hold-all into the back street of the cab, commanding the driver to head to King's Cross. It's a place as good as any. Soon I find myself asking the cabbie to weigh in on Tony Blair's year-long departure from government. He's halfway through before I'm telling him how it really is. Back to 80s Britain, my friend. All strapped in for the ghost train? The driver stares at me funny. Probably thinks I'm as young as I look. He doesn't know how old my memories are. I scrutinize my likeness blinking back at me from the passenger window. I adjust my new pair of glasses. My hands return to my lap, cupped in a delicate pile. Good boy. And there's no Vicky. My imaginary girl's gibbering's muted. Is this bye-bye schizophrenia? Should I feel lucky? My cab speeds along as I tear at the casual suit and tie I'd so readily accepted. Fingers scrabble into my light baggage and yank out a Superman hoodie, jeans, a long red cape of a coat, and apple red boots. I whip my yellow leather belt about my waist. Then I stuff my suit into the hold-all and offer the bundle to the driver. Not for me, sir, he says. No, thank you. Whatever. I lay the duffel bag on my knees and inspect my reflection in the passenger window. This past that's come to face me. I have to turn away, and I take in the ordinariness of the man at the wheel, his life of shopping with the wife and watching reality TV. Want to see something really cool? I say. What's that? Replies the cabbie. Stop the car. You want to get out here? The driver's eyes flick between me and the barren countryside. Yep, I reply. Stop the car. Out I hop. Just as the cab brakes, my crimson trench coat jockeying wind with perfect elegance. Watch this. I raise my hands to the sky, reaching, waiting, pushing, hoping, and tensing my entirety as I stand by the side of the taxi. Nothing. The Russian Doll Stories, Chapter 5, Magic Words. Sorry, I say as I shuffle along the back seat. Bad joke. Bad joke? I close my eyes, thoroughly intent upon faking sleep for the rest of the journey. Must be the result of not having any proper believers for so long. Matt being my only one has fucked me up in some way. What happens to a god's powers if they've been siphoning belief from a madman? Shit. Everyone depends on me. I think this as I open up to the world my taxi races through. A woman offering ice cream to her lover's lips. An old man on a park bench sprinkling stale bread to a wave of pigeons rippling around him. There screams a toddler, gripped in the arms of a woman who won't lose composure. She just smiles, just carries on, blissful despite the child's endless mewling. What would she do if she realized all her patience counted for nothing? That's the only thing between her child and world-conquering monsters. It's powerless me, isn't it? With my face pressed to the window, I spy a father loaded down with luggage, a pot-bellied parent scolding his young boy for letting go of his hands so close to the road. I swivel in my passenger seat, squint out the window, and hold on to the image of parent and child for as long as my telescopic vision allows. Forget King's Cross, I say, eyes fixed on the faraway dot the two of them have become. Let's head to Turnpike Lane. Now, every spin of the taxi's wheels drives me nearer to my past, my holy ground, my village Poe. I tease my diary out my pocket. Mythos is safer on the page than swirling in one's head. Village Poe, a settlement occupied by tall creatures covered with long black hair. The Dilfs. Long tusks out of faces more animal than human, and they are fierce. The clergy of Bolaram, the demigod of chaos, who merged with David's shape to become me. They live only to feed Bolaram via worship. A people I left behind. But how do I begin talking to them? I'm not sure. And I nurse the details of this plan, the one where I count on Vicky, a child, a little kid. Superman would save Jimmy Olsen from trouble, not draw the newsboy into Lex Luthor's line of fire. The Man of Steel's job is to rescue Lois Lane from the crashing helicopter, not escort her back into it. Via the rearview mirror, I stare the cab driver deep in the eye and tell him to stop the car. I keep bumping into people as I walk. I've not prepared myself for how fast London is. And someone has turned the fucking brightness up on everything. Monitors selling holidays and new mobile phones catch my eye on every street. Everyone seems to be talking to machines, taking pictures of themselves or taking pictures of themselves in front of something they've travelled from another country to see themselves in the picture with. Fuck. Maybe it's just me. Perhaps I've been away so long, but the volume knob on the chaotic TV that is the world is jammed on 10, no matter where I walk. When I look at all this commercialism, the willingness of people to get caught up in this net, I quit walking. I lean against the side of a building, carefully. I shut 2011 out by crumbling pathetic ideas to re-enter Vicky's life. And when the most plausible scenarios arise within, it's my Superman top I have to thank for being my North Star. I used the stark image of the father and son I'd seen during the drive from Shrewsbury to blot them out. Day dissolves to night, and night dissolves back to day. Each morning births a charming speech for the abandoned Dilfs of Village Poe. Each performance never enough to convince me to return, not if it means relying on Vicky to take me there. I distract myself, often reading through books and comics in stores. With growing regularity, the shopkeepers ask me to leave. I'm beginning to look homeless, I think. All this grime. I must smell like sludge you scuff from a shoe. This makes sense, of course. Sleeping fetal, life beneath dual carriageways, the occasional doorway, a bus shelter. I think of Matt, not flying, and what else I can no longer do. I'll test my powers out tomorrow. One night I'm laughing about selling the suit and my duffel bag to some guy with no legs for £5. What was I going to do with the suit? What do I really need the bag for? Just need to eat. All I need to carry is my journal, which fits nicely in my trench coat, the inside pocket. So warm and secure. No gangrene lunch! I wake up to this crazy guy shrieking. A lost cause and crutches. Looks like he's been out here longer than me. No gangrene lunch! During the day I stink up libraries as I thumb through classics, seeking out the common thread of the hero. I must be more than the beasts that want me dead. When I let in the world's noise, its sports cars and dream homes, aimed at people who own music I can't stand, I strike up conversations with street workers. I discuss their pamphlets and cleaning duties for a short while. I find myself in front of a toy store looking at superheroes. The action figures. What the hell does Spider-Man need of a Spider-mobile? I'll test out my powers tomorrow. I pore over diary entries, reminding myself of the selfishness of David Shape, so as not to repeat it as Spiderfingers. David Shape would slouch at his desk, making calls to gyms, restaurants, hotels, papers and magazines. He'd sell them a suave, sophisticated version of himself, and for what? So that they would like him enough to place his company's ads in the new edition of whatever shit rag helped their commercial nothingness grow and grow and grow. He'd help them consume the lives of people who'd been brainwashed into thinking they needed to look, think and feel like some airbrushed, photoshopped version of themselves. Break times spent at a cafe from the office were bittersweet. The comics he'd lose himself in for 40-odd minutes. Teenage fantasies of writing them long gone. The boy he used to be would have hated the man he'd become. More Luther than Kent. He had to do right by the boy and escape the office where he'd sold his boss and fellow workers an idea of himself. He had to do better by David Shape the man, and not David Shape the brand. He'd move into charity. One can't really blame him for thinking he'd done the right thing. I read and reread the entry. One night I'm running, bolting, because beneath the noisy copulation of inner city music, rolling below the eternal soundtrack of car beeps, police sirens, the occasional scream of a motorbike, someone has yelled the magic words. Oh God, help! I charge along dank London streets. Please, anyone! I pass a movie poster at the bus stop, the poster celebrating the life of Christopher Lee, a picture from the actor's legendary role as Dracula. The image slows me down a little as I run towards the drama. The Russian Doll Stories, Chapter 6, Spiderfingers to the Rescue. Samson, an African, well-educated and well-meaning, his eye patch being a testament to what being agreeable can mean for someone on London streets. Terrible mouth ulcers, and though his facial hair ages him, Samson is not long past the age of what, 20? 22? My X-ray vision filters past his shivering blue navy puffer coat, hugging the twiglets he has for arms. So many sores on his skin. His account of his fainting from starvation is a storytelling experience that dribbles past his split lip. He sits on the grass, palms checking his nose for blood, a feature bent out of shape on a man nestled among crackled clumps of a dying year. Hunger derails the retelling of his story. Days without food will do that to any person, so that before they realize it, the starving pour out semi-deranged ideas, unconventional solutions to end stomach pain, for example, the scoffing of book pages, the only one in his rucksack as it happens. Samson's belly has to live on something before it eats itself. I told myself, don't be mad, he says. Keep your book safe. The Tao of Pooh is not food. Don't do it all. Don't eat that book, Samson. When he idly fingers ribs beneath sallow skin, the needs of his brain and body shoveling over the cries of his soul, I see it, perhaps clearer than him. That thing he's become in those chilly moments. Through his words I watch Samson thrust himself up from the brown leaves. Told myself I'd survive, no matter what. Samson's search through Soho's nightlife ends in a street corner outside a shop with pink lettering and blacked-out windows. He tells me of his half an hour's pouting. I imagine his come-hither movements only highlight his newbie innocence. He describes the way he sized up, and it's only then I realize where his story's going. It's only then I know how best to play my part as saviour. Our innocent rent boy in training, he stands opposite a man, a mountain of height, a smiling stranger who promises no rough stuff, just money. So of course young Samson Owusu follows the tall man into the hedge-infested St. John's Gardens. The light is terrible there. His mind filled with food, defences down. A meal, but hot. Hot. From a chip shop, not from the trash. To have my belly nice and full, be human again. Not see that waste of space in the shop windows. Wearing my birthday jacket, wearing my face, you know what I'm saying, Mr. Spider, yes? Yes, I do, Samson. I smile, head tilted to the side, seeing him as he wishes to be seen. He shares his dream of rising steam and spicy dishes, and his voice breaks when assurance of payment for favours reveals itself to be a lie. No half-naked indignities, no selling of one's self-respect, not on this cold September night. He tells me how fate spat at him through violence, punches and kicks to the face, his fragile weight forced to the undergrowth of wood chip and fallen leaves, the squeals of fear reenacted to show me just how his tall abuser pummeled him, broke him, all whilst a shorter man in filthy tracksuit bottoms unzipped his bag. There's nothing on him. As if my only belongings are crap to be thrown around, like this asshole. He just says there's nothing on him. But the muggers, evil bastards, they found my book, the Tao of Pooh. I don't want them to touch it, but they're fucking evil. The short one says, isn't this for kids? Samson half smiles at me with a disgust and contempt that has no place in a face so young. I almost skip a beat in my act of nodding concern. Philistine, what do they know of Werewolf or Benjamin Huff? I nod, even though I've not read the Tao of Pooh, some early 80s book displaying some Western's idea of Eastern philosophy. Mill's honey-seeking little bear acting as the enlightened one's proxy. Samson takes it out of his bag to show me. I don't look at his face now because he's the chicken before it's wrapped in the cling film. He's the pork before it's slain, when really I need him to be the Sunday food product sold on television. Only a vampire who was once a vegan would understand. Actually, that's not quite right. So then the taller one, he turns on me saying, no money? What kind of a rent boy are you? Samson shoves into me, showing me how the taller mugger pushed his fat accomplice to the side. They ransacked his bag. They stuck filthy hands in the pockets of his jeans and jacket. Nothing there. And he says again, nothing there. Business slow, huh? He says. Here, I'm talking to you. He shouts loud, right into my ear, you know. I beg them not to hurt me. I beg like a little baby. Then the fat one says, come on, Eddie, let's go. His face is rashes first, eyeballs, nose, and mouth second. Maybe they were homeless too. Me, I don't know. The tall one laughs and slaps me on the cheek, like this. And Samson slaps his own cheek hard, because the adrenaline from tonight's main event hasn't subsided. Need to teach this little shit a lesson, right? Says the tall one. He kicks me in the crotch and whispers in my ear. Wanna get bastard. Oh God, please save me. Please. I'm doing this even though God is just a children's story to me now. I'm shouting, I'll do anything. You know? So you get me, Mr. Spider? Samson says all this, and I nod understanding, but for real. Samson doesn't have to recount what happens next, but I let him continue because he can't help it, and every word is a little prayer to me. A whooshing sound, a flag of red, I think, but that was your jacket, yes? I nod as he yaks on about a speeding force so powerful, so inhuman in its tackle of the lanky mugger that he probably thought starvation had driven him over the edge. He sits up to witness the red distortion become a man in a crimson coat. He watches the man crash into Eddie with wild animal force which sends him several feet into a hedge. Samson sways mesmerized by the lead performer, a hero in a ship's sail of a coat, his leap into the air, his descent upon the dazed man hung upon the park shrubbery. One blow blurred into 3, then 6, so many unpleasant breaking sounds as the swift warrior's fists clobber and swat. Samson hears them. He hears them now. The crack of hard bones as they snap inside Eddie's chest. We hear them together. The fat mugger edges forward, realizing the do-gooder in the red jacket is due to turn his fury upon him. He makes a run for the park gate, but there's no escape from the streak. A blood-red energy unbound everywhere. Samson talks of his confusion, momentarily convinced of there being 2 men in red coats, 2 men in red boots, relentless. But there is only one. The man in the red coat has a blue hoodie, decides Samson, a red, yellow, and blue familiarity branded across the garment. Superman. Crunching, wood-splitting sounds follow the landing of Superman's brown knuckles. Samson's wide eyes tracking the mugger's flight into the air, his bulging peepers follow the bad man as he hurtles all the way back down, a fall from a great height he'd been tossed into. 6 meters, perhaps less. The boy can't be sure, not in the park's badly lit area. The man is a crumpled mess of meat and bone upon the ground. That's when I saw you, says Samson. And I remember his fearful moment of non-comprehension before he grasps at the hand I offer, my other palm clenched in a fist, a tightened ball of leftover tension dug deep into my hip. Samson stares out and up into the sky as I go over the rest of the story in my mind. I'm Spiderfingers. I pulled him up off the floor and smiled the way heroes do when justice has been served. What's your name? After a short pause, he told me. How biblical. Do you like theatre, Samson? His head shook, aware of his hand in mine. I let it go. How about films? You like movies? I remember how he nodded, like a dog, so ready to please its master. Films then, and I cleared the dirt and leaves off of him. Time to change the script. Permit me to direct your life, Samson? Who are you? He asked. I ruffled my hair and replied, a friend. I'm sure he's caught the smell of me, the fug of rotten produce. Yes, Samson, we both dream of soap. That's when he sat back down on the grass and told me about the muggers. How long has it been since he had someone to talk to? How long's it been since someone's called him by his name? What use is there in giving a fork a moniker or some other tool a title? Samson pads my Superman hoodie as if he must pat the reality down to make sure it's real. As he does so, he tells me that I remind him of his little brother's interest for anything superhero related. Embarrassed, he tries to hide the smile on his face. He tries. During the collection of his belongings, Samson can't help but steal looks. Then he steals the look. He's noticed the flames in my hair. Samson shakes his head and rubs his eyes, hoping to clear his mind. A head full of fire, the smoke that billows out of it, the smell of jasmine, an aroma which all but cancels my rotten fruit odor. Samson digs at his eyes again. So innocent, so young. A child in the world of bad men. I've got to go, Matt, I say, looking over his shoulder. Matt? Who's Matt?
says Samson. His eyes burn so far into me I have to turn my back on him. I make my bad excuses and run away. The Russian Doll Stories, Chapter 7. Not Again. There's another bloody poster of Christopher Lee, this time on the side of a bus. The adverts for some restored slab of 60s horror speeds away. Here comes another. Can't escape the vision of fangs sinking into a virgin's neck. Streets with familiar names, but unfamiliar shops are everywhere. Fads I've only seen in magazines bump into me. I glare and shout at them, escaping into an alleyway. The sign calls this place Hope Street. Ha! That's when I notice an advert for a new dawn. A discoloured phantom, beaten into London bricks by time and climate. Toothpaste commercial teeth sit comfortably within a Cheshire Cat grin. Eyes turned grey by English showers retain the blaze and visionary energy of a leader. This face with the accompanying slogan, "Things can only get better," promised something vital once. Enough votes endowed the grinning man with the power to save the country. I shunt down past the duvet. Its rise and fall indication enough that there's people under there. My stride quickens as I try to outrun the evidence of a widening gap between rich and poor. Beggars outside a newly refurbished gastropub. Stop and search in a group of kids, one with a bright orange 17 Today badge pinned to their baseball cap. Presents out of hand. Officers donning blue surgical gloves. All this evidence of what leaders do with people's belief once they attain status. How am I any different from Tony fucking Blair? A simple sum appears in my mind, an uncomplicated sociological equation, once again understood. I run from the dirty alleyway and the faded lies of years ago. I hurry back to the main street. I run from shop windows with high-def televisions advertising insurance. I kick over the coffee cup of a man sitting cross-legged next to a cash machine. My hands reach around me, collecting the coins that have spilled from his most valued item. He's still screaming at me, though, as I hand them back to him. I rush off again. There's a stack of magazines with some celebrity I'm supposed to know all about. I push the wastes of paper down. Rushing into the shopping centre is another bad idea. Some beat-orientated song telling me how to dance in the club, and I can't find the exit. I'm freaking out. Customers and promotion girls handing out goodie bags. Some new brand. Free stubs for hot drinks. All those looming screens the size of front rooms gaping down from on high. How I get to King's Cross Station, I don't know. There's a guy with a shaved head who tries to get a donation out of me, attempts to flog his spiritual book into my hands. Please. Can't get away from him quick enough, and who knows how I'd value the book if I were simply given it for free or discovered whilst browsing in the library. These fucking adverts are everywhere, and they're keen, so eager to have me reconfigure my reality for a regular fee. The Christmas card, the Valentine's message above a cinema, or any other seasonal-related marketing campaign constructed to make millions from the world's collective desire to communicate condolence, celebration, congratulation, the whole entire gamut of acknowledgement and praise. I'm no part of a PR team's pie. This is where my superpowers increase my load of societal pressure. In this world that doesn't know me, I'm an amoeba of a demographic. All my abilities diluted through a black and white understanding of inconsequential rooftop fights. I stop a mugger, but a corrupt politician is free to spin their lies, a criminal mastermind beyond my reach. Being able to fly and see through walls only exacerbates this unfair, continuous internal struggle to conform to an unattainable identity depicted in radiant collectibles that I live in this world with great power and even greater responsibility, and it's only a matter of time before ceaseless brochures promoting happiness, cash for question scandals, or the police brutality caught on camera moments drain my thou shalt not kill axiom. All my strength and speed will confuse and frustrate me then, terrorize my awareness, and yes, lead me to an untimely breakdown. With the heat vision comes a rich history of how it ought to be used, a legacy lived out by the most part by people created for plot, idealized men and women, made-up characters that face multiple threats. They keep steel chins held high, not a tear in sight, no roll of the eyes, no drooling bowels under superhuman control. They'd never find themselves at the mercy of ill-prepared psychiatrists. Always sane. How disastrous would that be? Picture a superhero's psychotic break play out for the rest of the world, and just how mangled would this sick person's relationships become once they fell down the jagged cavern of their soap opera life. Even if such an individual were privy to the message of Watchmen, I'd wager their objectivity would easily corrupt under the wrap of costume, the behaviors and strict moral code that the uniform demands of its wearer. I don't know how much sense I'm making. I need a bath. I need to sleep. Days spent walking, an eternity thinking of myself in the right way, a moving target, the fire of godhood above my head acting as a bullseye. The lantern forever burns for the intention of the enemy. They could strike from anywhere, at any time. Must keep moving. Every crazy person I see, each person talking to themselves that I come across, I'm thankful. Thank you, London, for reminding me how life inside you could be a hell of a lot worse. My head's been laying on the concrete for a while now, I think. The ground tricked me, turned gravity into its weapon. Food will always be something my subconscious mind desires, but gods don't need to eat from bins, and down I stay. The last few hours are watched through a prism of detachment, as though these flashes of incidents are happening to some stage actor. The play's been intriguing, but overlong. The main character, who looks so much like me, leans into the shoulder of barely 5'2", 4'11", an old lady. This picture isn't right. She keeps him up on his feet, this man far removed from myself. She has such a genuine smile. We stumble into a warm flat. My eyes swivel about the walls, old photos everywhere, remembrances of a young lady, always smiling, always stood next to a man equally happy, adorn every wall. The mantelpiece carries yet more pictures, as does the surface area of an ancient television. The old dear nurses me in a golden heaven. So many antiques and photographs framed with gold, golden ornaments. The light shade above is the thatched kind which lends the living space its sunset aura. Closed curtains, night time. How she attends to me. I am her newborn. Muffins and pastries and orange juice and chicken. So much chicken. Peas dribbling down my chin. Always a spoonful of goodness hovering just beyond my lips. The woman of at least 70 smiling at the end of the fork, spoon, plate of a new mouth-watering portion. Cutlery and serving mats embroidered with her favourite colour over and over. Enough gold for a pharaoh to charge into the afterlife without worry. I begin to fully accept this reality, that the character being fed all this food in this warm house deserves such kindness. Pictures of the old lady and her husband dote on me. I burrow deeper into the blankets that bandage my body, offering a grin to the doting pensioner, the caress of thick duvets, 2 of them, spun tight. From her sofa I study the woman without comment, purple shawl around those tiny shoulders, a dainty frame which now harbours the strength to do my will. 10 years ago it was. Yes, 10 years gone now. Her voice is the sound of East End, the undiluted timbre of 50s Newham. You swooped down to me like an angel, you did. Just flew on down from the night to punish those sons of Satan. The woman's eyes cradle fire. My grandmother, rest her soul, would roll in her grave if she heard this. But it's the truth. You're more real than anything in the good book. Ask me why.
Why?
Oh, you're good to play along. You knowing everything and all. You're more real than anything in that book because even though it's the word of God, it's written down by fearful men. Angels are always going to be shining full of light. No scruffiness on an angel. But that's not what the truth is it, Lord? The men who wrote the Bible wouldn't have you dressed this way.
She points at my clothes draped over an armchair. Their stink embarrasses me. Her acceptance of them, so humbling. All that faith in me fuels my new acolyte, with the strength to carry me here, to undress me.
So, who is to say an angel doesn't swear? You called those evil muggers a thing or two, names I don't dare repeat. Covered in smelly purple liquids you was.
Minion blood. I saved her from my enemies, although this particular case of heroism has long since scrambled into the vast globule of saviourhood in my head. No face, no name, no brief exchange is easy to distinguish from the next. Casual vigilantism from way back then coalesced as one long uninterrupted action sequence.
Thank you for saving me.
I spy my glasses on the table next to me and put them on. I take a good long look at her. She stands so straight, so charged, vital, prepared and inflamed with the strength of someone far younger than her thinning silver suggests.
You beat those cretins and return my bag to me. Do you know what was in there? Of course you do. But I'll fetch them so you can thank him yourself.
I feel my forehead knot as the elderly woman moves with a teenager's speed sprightly and toward the lavender handbags sharing the safe with me. She pulls something shiny out of the bag. A golden urn.
Henry,
announces the pensioner, holding the urn out in front of her.
Used to keep all sorts of nonsense in my bag with him, but I've learnt my lesson from that night. I really have.
She says this stroking Henry, captivated by the wall behind me, and so I turned to see a giant portrait of newlyweds. The groom stood so tall next to his bride, who presents a smile identical to my elderly hostess. She stands so straight, so proud. Her golden urn clutched to her bosom as her stare leaps through the picture behind me. Her time jump into the past, a life less lonely.
Thank you for saving us, she says, turning back to me.
This pseudo-religion she's constructed around my helping her. It's got power. I sit up a little, into the snugness of the sofa, wrapping the cocoon of luxury tighter to my torso. I won't spoil the image her brain's tinkered. This might of hers, a power that only the very old can muster, can serve me well. This home, my new church.
Your hair, it smells so good.
She reaches for me. Henry clutched under her arm.
I couldn't help but touch it when you were sleeping. Your hair helped me find you again, but you know that already, don't you?
A small hand, shaking, withered, caresses my matted dreads. Tiny fingers covered in liver spots ruffle my mane. After a long moment, she yanks her free hand back up to her face. I've witnessed human skeletons in hell crack slower than this. My hair, the old truth, hits me again. The scent of my hair, an intoxicant which rises forever out of me. It's infected her. Not again. My scent, that jasmine aroma, it'll attract minions. This homestead would become a fort. Not again. I rage from the comfort of her sofa. Not again, I scream, shoving the old lady to the side, scooping my clothes from the armchair, running for the hallway. I take a desperate look back when I hear whimpering. My host has lost her grasp on Henry. Her husband billows out of his glistening vial, a cloud of a man dissolving across the floor of a lonely apartment. Not again! I grasp for the red trench coat on the back of the door.
Instinctively, I search the inside pocket for my diary. It's safe. Not again! I break down the door, falling down among its splinters on the street. I push my glasses further onto my face, sprinting out into the night, deep into the outside I vow to finally call a home. A better church for me. I will make do of being my own believer. A better church for all. How long will it take my true nature to justify a sacrifice for the greater good? 4 days. 4 days till I search London's roads for Samson. After all, the fate of the entire planet depends upon my survival. Someone will have to act as a battery. Someone unconnected to anyone else. But not like the old lady. Someone that no one will miss. I brush aside the stark image of Christopher Lee's Dracula on the side of a bus, blood dripping from his fucking mouth. I push the sight out of mind to hunt Samson. And after a few fevered days, I find him.